Hello and welcome to our public affairs program here at Catamount Radio. I'm Brian Collamore, host of the one-hour show. Each Sunday we call it Catamount Community Connection. And we enjoy talking with folks from the business community, professional, nonprofit, and political arenas. The goal of the program is to make our listeners aware of things that are going on not just in Rutland County, but throughout the state, things that might be affecting everyone listening. In some cases, maybe a new law or regulation that went into effect. And our program is brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland since 1846. And we're looking forward to the 178th Fair coming up August 13th through 17th, 2024. Happy this morning and this evening, depending on when you're listening to the show, to welcome in Heidi Henderson. And we are going to talk about therapy dogs for a little bit. So welcome in, Heidi. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about you, a little bio, how you managed to do what you do.
Well, I became involved in therapy work back when I got my very first Bernese Mountain Dog. And from that point, it's just kind of expanded from being an actual therapy dog handler to becoming an evaluator to starting a nonprofit in Vermont, which is called Vermont Pet Partners, which is an affiliate of a national organization called Pet Partners. So we are the local branch for the state of Vermont, providing therapy dogs for all types of different situations.
Okay. So Pet Partners, I think a lot of folks would be able to sort of put the two words together and figure out what it means. We often see maybe ads on television where someone is in a hospital lying there and the dog comes in and makes them feel a little bit better, but I've seen them out and about. So tell us a little bit about how somebody finds a pet to be a partner.
Well, so our handlers all work with their own dogs. They're trained through therapy dog programs, and they get basic training through local training facilities where you could go for obedience training or a therapy dog class. You may have interest in doing therapy, but you just don't know how to get started. And you can start in these classes, which will get you your basic education for it. Then at that point, to become a team, you would contact Pet Partners, our national group, take an online handler course, and if you feel that your dog is ready to be evaluated once they're 1 year old, then you would come to us on the local side, and we would perform the in-person evaluation, which would be a skills test to see how you can cope and handle in all different types of environments. So that's how you get going as a team. And your question may have been more about how you find therapy.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious. You mentioned you're a pet partner for the whole state, so you must travel around quite a bit.
Well, I actually stay kind of local in the Killington, Rutland region, but we do have teams. That's because my other job takes up a lot of my time, but we do have other teams that do a bit of traveling, and we are kind of centrally located here in Killington because that's where we do the evaluations. But I have teams that come down from the Northeast Kingdom, from Southern Vermont, Central Vermont, Eastern New York, New Hampshire to be evaluated. And then once you do pass and you're a registered team with Pet Partners, you can basically take that registration and start doing your visits wherever you want. In any state, actually. For us, you could go do it in any state. We get contacted locally by nursing homes, hospitals, schools for the READ program, which is reading assistance dogs. We get contacted by that. And then we put out an email to our mass group of handlers and teams in the Vermont region. And then from there, they can choose whether they would like to, participate in that type of a visit. And then they'll contact the facility back. So we provide the teams, and we provide the support to the teams during the time that they are a registered team. And there are all kinds of opportunities for them all over the state.
We're talking to Heidi Henderson from Vermont Pet Partners. That's different, I think, from a service dog, correct?
Yes, it is.
Can you explain the difference a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So therapy dogs are registered. It's not a certification necessarily. They are registered to provide a service to groups of people, many people, more than one person. They do not have access to restaurants. They do not have access to planes, traveling. They don't have special permission to live in housing that is has no pets permitted. That does not get them into those type of facilities. Service dogs, on the other hand, are trained to provide a service for one person. Very many different levels: guide dogs, assistance dogs. Very specifically trained, years of training, should be years of training, to provide that service for one person. So they are dedicated to that one person. So there is a big difference between service dogs and therapy dogs. Therapy dogs are there for everybody.
Okay. And they're there for companionship, sort of, more than to do a specific function, if you will, right?
Yeah, well, that in the beginning, yes, that's how it used to be, but it's changed a lot. Therapy dog programs have really excelled. We do animal-assisted therapy, animal-assisted activities, animal-assisted interventions. So these are different levels of work that therapy dogs can do. So like in a hospital setting, let's say in a rehab situation where somebody is getting motor skills back, you could, and this is very goal oriented, and it's directed by the healthcare providers. So they could be throwing a ball and the dog could be bringing the ball back. Okay. So that's a little bit different than an animal assisted activity or animal assisted activities where you're really there to provide support, emotional support. If somebody just wants to pet a dog, they don't have to do an activity with the dog. They don't have to the dog doesn't have to do tricks. They're really there for the companionship, the petting, the hugging, the, interacting.
Okay. So the idea, and I guess I was not clear, maybe I'm still not clear, it isn't a situation where someone would contact you to get a pet. They have to have their own first, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So therapy dogs, we do not train dogs. We are not a training facility where, like service dogs, go to a school where they learn to actually do the service that they need to do. We actually evaluate other people's dogs. Lots of dogs in the community have fabulous temperaments for this type of work, and there's a lot of people that really want to get out there and do things for the local community. And this is a great way to give back with your own dog if it's got the right temperament for it and it's got the right, manners. Good manners is what we're always looking for. And so this is for really anyone that thinks that they want to start to give back. It's a great opportunity, and they can go through the online handler course, which helps teach them how to work out in the public. And then they would do the in-person one with me and my other evaluators that are in the state. And then they would be ready to go on their own. So yes, no, we do not actually train the dogs. I get that call a lot asking, if I can help train their dog, or do I have any dogs that are ready to go? These are all our own dogs.
Okay. And again, we're talking to Heidi Henderson from Vermont Pet Partners. Is there a particular breed that seems to be more likely to be a good pet partner than another? I know some dogs, for better or for worse, seem to have sort of a reputation, if you will.
Yeah, and you know what? There are dogs that maybe don't have great reputation, yet they have been some absolutely stellar therapy dogs. They kind of get a bad reputation. Dogs like pit bulls, we have registered teams. They're fabulous. They are the most loving, wonderful teams that we have. I have Bernese Mountain Dogs. It happens to be the breed that I have. They make nice therapy dogs. Is there one breed that's better than another? Not necessarily. I mean, I've seen them all. And in fact, one thing that makes Vermont Pet Partners a little bit different from the other therapy groups that are in our region, there's quite a few actually, we're not the only one, is that we also evaluate other species. So I have miniature horses that are part of our teams. We have cats. We have llamas. We have some pocket pets. So there are other animals that we evaluate as well as dogs. So different place, different people, different animals.
We're back on Catamount Community Connection, our program brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair in Rutland. since 1846, and we're already looking forward to the 178th Fair, August 13th through 17th. Coming up, it'll be here before you know it. We're talking in our first part of the program with Heidi Henderson from Vermont Pet Partners, and we've talked a little bit about the program, but I know there are different groups that that provide this service too. You're not the only one in Vermont.
No, we definitely are not. In Vermont, in particular, we have a lot of teams here, but there are also other teams that are more regional to the different areas in Vermont. We have in our local area, Caring Canines has a large presence. We have Therapy Dogs International, which is, we see a lot more of those teams up in the northern part of Vermont. Other national groups that we do see in the area would be Bright and Beautiful, Love on a Leash, Bright Spot, the Good Dog Foundation. There's quite a few organizations. And that's one thing I probably would want to mention. You know, if there's people that are interested in starting with this line of work or this line of volunteering, and let's just say you have a great dog and you have a family member who is now living in an assisted living home, it's a good idea before you go down the road of getting evaluated with one specific organization. It's a good idea to contact the facility where you're really interested in visiting, because they may be affiliated with a certain group. And I always hate to see somebody go through our evaluation process and then find out that they want to go, let's say, do visits at Fletcher Allen. Fletcher Allen only lets one other therapy group into the hospital.
I see.
So Rutland Regional, we have Pet Partners teams there, and we have Caring Canines teams there. So it's good to really kind of dig deep before you jump in to see what the facilities are accepting. Some facilities don't even know it's out there, and I'll tell you right now, if you contacted an activities director at a facility and you said, I have a therapy dog team, you'd be in there and they'd have you in there immediately, because there's really no, it's, you know, we're volunteering. They're always looking for new activities for their residents. So it's, you won't get turned down. Let's put it that way.
Okay. And we should probably let people know how to get a hold of you. I'm sure you've got a website or a phone number or some way for them to contact you, right?
Yep. Yeah. So through our website, VermontPetPartners.com, VermontPetPartners.org, you can find us, and there's direct contacts to me and how to get into the evaluation process.
Okay. And we'll repeat that before we conclude this program with the Vermont Pet Partners Group. Tell me a little bit about the READ program.
So the Reading Education Assistance Dogs, this is a program that has been started, and a lot of groups are doing it. This is where we go into the local libraries and we set up little reading area. Usually we're sitting on a floor, we're sitting on a blanket, we have our dog, and then the librarians will help schedule us students and children, really any age, beginning to read, a little, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds. And you can set like 10-minute windows, and each kid can bring their own book, and they sit and they read to the dog. And it's truly more about reading to the dog. It's not reading to me. I'm not sitting there. I'm not correcting them. I'm trying, they stumble on words. We would say, oh, Iceland says it's, this is the word. So it's a much less intimidating way for kids to be able to read. And they seem to excel when they're reading to a dog sometimes. If they're a little apprehensive about reading to teachers or parents, all inhibitions are gone. They're reading to a dog, and the dog is just sitting there. Dog could be sleeping. Then they're petting and they're reading, and their skills are growing. Okay. So that's a program that we do it in Killington at the Killington Library, and there's other libraries in the state that are running similar programs, and they also do these at schools. Okay. So the librarians at schools could also have dogs come in.
Is there I don't know if I want to say perfect age, but, and I've got 5 dogs spread out between here and other places where I visit on occasion, but it seems like young puppies are having like a different personality than an older dog. So if someone is there a better, I guess, age at which to try to figure out whether your dog might be a good pet partner?
Well, even getting into basic obedience classes or therapy dog classes at a younger age, 6 months, I wouldn't really start diving into it much earlier than that, because dogs do change, like you said, a lot. And we don't evaluate until they're 1 year old. And my dogs can pass a test at 1 year old, but some dogs, they're still very, very puppy. And we just tell people, take a little bit more time, do a little bit more training. We do have levels that you can pass our evaluations at, which would indicate the types of facilities and environments that you can get into. And so we would give a complex rating to a dog that could handle, let's say, a juvenile or a psychiatric facility. We're a little bit more of an unpredictable environment. Our other qualification is predictable, and that's in an environment that is much more predictable. There's a lot of staff support, and we find so sometimes the team is not quite ready for complex yet. They're ready to do work, but they're not ready to dive into those complex type of environments. So they're starting off in more predictable environments. Or let's say the dog likes to paw a lot and give its paw a lot. Then we might say no fragile people. That's a qualification that we can check off, so that might be an environment that you want to stay away from right now until, your dog is a little bit older, a little more mature, but the dog has passed the test, but is very exuberant and, loves people a lot. And the loving part is great. Sometimes we got to channel it in a little bit so that nobody gets hurt. So we do have the ability to do that, kind of evaluate and put people at different levels and help them, steer them into an area or a type of facility that's going to be good for them.
We're speaking with Heidi Henderson from Vermont Pet Partners. You mentioned the test. Can you tell us a little bit about what does the test entail? So
the evaluation, it takes about a half an hour. There's usually two of us evaluating. One of us is writing notes and the other one is performing the exercises. They start with as simple as sit down, sitting by your side, accepting petting, accepting a friendly stranger, and then the test escalates. And then you would start to begin walking in the room that you're using with medical equipment like walkers, wheelchairs. You, as an evaluator, you might have a hat on or a robe. So you're creating different situations for the dog to see how tolerant they are of the situation. By the end of the test, you have like 4 people with their hands on the dog just to see how the dog does in an environment where it starts off with 1 person and it ends with 4. And all these exercises are graded. You as the handler are graded and the dog is graded. You can score 1s and 2s and not readies. And through this, at the end, we add it all up and we see, are you going to be able to be a therapy dog team or not? Okay. And some people really want to be therapy dog handlers. They do. Their dog really has no interest in it. Yeah. And we see that. And it happens, and it can be discouraging, but what I try to encourage people in that is there's many ways you can volunteer. It doesn't necessarily have to be with your dog. You can go with another team. So not every dog is cut out for the work. Okay.
Are there different levels? You mentioned the test, so how many levels are there?
So it's you're either a therapy team or not. And if you are a team, there's only the 2 levels. It's complex or predictable.
Okay. So yeah, I'm trying to think. A hospital, to me, I don't know whether that'd be predictable or not. A lot of different things can happen.
Yeah, and it kind of depends. The mental health unit in Rutland, I would want to see a complex team in there. That can be a very unpredictable environment. Although there is staff involvement, which is always, in that facility in particular, there's always staff involvement. You're not really one-on-one with any of the clients there. There is always somebody watching over you. And in the hospital setting, they're usually doing their notes, and they're actually writing reports on what they're seeing. Okay. Nursing home facilities, they can be a little less monitored, less staff involvement. You could be walking through one of the places here in Rutland, and you could go room to room, and you would be popping in with your team just to get a couple pets, make somebody smile, maybe make their day. You know, maybe they had a dog. Maybe they want to talk about that with you and tell you about their dog. So sometimes it's just sitting listening.
Okay. I have to think, and we've been talking mostly about dogs, but is it more difficult to evaluate, and I don't know why, cats always seem to be way more independently minded than a dog is. Is that true? Or
They are. And rabbits. I mean, we evaluate rabbits, and that one still, I mean, they can just sit on your lap, you know? I mean, they're actually great little animals, and cats. We do have therapy cats. They're very different than the cats I grew up with. These cats love to be held. They love to be pet. My cat growing up would never have been a therapy cat. So yes, and we as evaluators for different species, we have guides that we go by and that we're given from our national organization to help us evaluate other species. So things to look for in other animals.
Okay. So if someone's listening that has a cat or a dog, and you mentioned horses too, right? Yeah,
they're great. We have miniature horses up in the Northeast Kingdom that are just doing phenomenal work. Just phenomenal work. Going into hospitals.
Really?
With their little rubber booties on. Huh. Yeah, beautiful teams.
Okay. So again, if someone has a pet, regardless, and you want to find out whether that pet would be a good partner or you together would make a good team, they would get a hold of you, right? Or some of the other organizations that you mentioned?
Yep.
Okay. And remind us again how they might get a hold of you.
The best place would be our website, which is VermontPetPartners.org.
Is that all spelled out?
Yes, it is.
VermontPetPartners.org.
Yep.
Okay. And you are like booking ahead? How?
We evaluate twice a year. We do it in March and we do it in October in Killington. We utilize the library's multipurpose room that we've been lucky enough to be able to use over the years. So we hold our evaluations one day, and if anybody gets in touch with me, I'll walk them through the whole process.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to mention, Heidi? We've covered a little bit, but I see you've got some other notes there.
Yeah, no, you know what? I think just there's a story that I like to tell because it was impactful to me in my career. When we started the therapy dog program at Rutland Regional back in 2009, I was one of the very first teams, along with my mother-in-law and a friend of hers, and we were some of the first teams that started doing visits there. And these visits back then were specifically in the mental health, the psychiatric unit. And that unit had so much impact on me, and really is what got me really more into this. There was a visit. I had a Bernese Mountain Dog, Karma. I no longer have her, but she could just go in and read the room. She just had the ability to do it, and she made an impact on so many people's lives. But one in particular was a gentleman, and in that unit, it was a carpeted floor, and we would just go in and sit on the floor, and could be one or two people, could be four people. And that day in particular, there was a young man who sat on the floor with me, and he just buried his head in her fur. I mean, she was a big furry Bernese Mountain Dog. And he just pet her and pet her and pet her and pet her. And our visits are about half an hour. I would say about 20 minutes into it, and he's still just petting her. No words, not talking. I'm not talking. Sometimes that's just how these visits go. At the end, last 10 minutes of the visit, he started talking to her. Not me, to her. I left the unit that day feeling like, wow, maybe that made a difference in somebody's life. And then I got a call from, sorry, this gets me a little emotional. Then I got a call from the healthcare provider, and they said, do you know that gentleman has been here for 3 weeks? And those are the first words he's ever uttered.
Amazing.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
Did you go back again?
At that time, we were going twice a month. Okay. And then the next time I went, he wasn't in the unit anymore. Okay. So I can only imagine good things happened.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You've brought one of your pets with you?
I did.
Some people may have been hearing panting in the background. I'm not sure.
I know.
So do you have a favorite place to visit with your pet?
Oh, I love the hospital work. My real full-time job has not given me the ability to get down there much these days. I'd like to get back going at Rutland, but right now we're doing the READ program in Killington. And we do some nursing home visits. And since I'm an evaluator, a lot of my time's been spent evaluating. Currently, I only have 2 registered dogs of my 4. I have 1 retired. I have 1 that would never pass the program.
Oh, no kidding.
And the other 2, they need to get out and do some work. I have a new puppy. She's over a year now, so she just recently passed, so she's ready to get rolling. It's this one's daughter, and I think she's going to make a good impact.
Are they all the same breed?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, they're all Bernese Mountain Dogs.
Yeah.
For me.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming in, and hopefully we've got the word out a little bit about this service, because I have to admit, I didn't know anything about it. So if you have a pet and you're interested, Heidi Henderson is her name, and you can go to Vermont, all spelled out, Pet Partners, plural, .org, and find out more about the program, and maybe find out how you could become half of a team and get evaluated and go out and do some great work. So thank you so much, Heidi. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
We're going to take another break, and we're coming back here on Catamount Community Connection. Welcome back to Catamount Community Connection. I'm Brian Collamore and host the program every Sunday. We just spoke with Heidi Henderson from Vermont Pet Partners. And we're going to change gears a little bit now and speak with Abigail Serra, who is a game warden for the state of Vermont. Welcome in, first of all. I'll call you Abby, but if you want to look up, it's Abigail, and the last name is Serra, Serra. And tell us a little bit about yourself. Did you always want to do this? How did you wind up being a state game warden?
Good question. So I actually did not always want to be a game warden. I didn't always know what a game warden even was. So I grew up in a rural setting in northeastern Vermont on a small farm. And when I was a kid, I wanted to be a large animal veterinarian. Because like most farm kids, you see the vet come to the farm and it looks like a cool job. So that's kind of what I wanted to do. And then I went to college at Linden State College, which now it was Northern Vermont University, and they may have changed the name. They've changed it a couple times.
We could probably spend an hour talking about all of that too, yeah.
Yeah, but I went there. I majored in natural science with a minor in biology, which the plan at that point was to go on to vet school. But then in my senior year, I started to get more interested in wildlife studies, and I learned that the warden service was hiring, found out what game wardens were. And that's kind of how I got into it. So it wasn't a lifelong dream, but it always was a lifelong dream of mine to work in an outdoor setting. So that kind of appealed to me, the outdoor aspect of it. And then I spent a lot of time as a child in the woods growing up. So I really had a strong connection with wildlife and the natural landscapes in Vermont. So.
What town did you grow up in? I'm just curious.
Wells River, Newbury.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm on the Senate Agriculture Committee, so that's one of the things that we do is to speak a lot with Commissioner Chris Herrick and the Fish and Wildlife folks. We had someone in just the other day. We were working on a bill. It will become law when the governor signs it, and I'm sure he will. And it was about something I probably would never have known this, but there are people who hunt bear and take a bear for the purpose of taking out the gallbladder, believe it or not, and the bear paws, because it makes for some sort of Asian soup, and they sell the meat to out-of-state people, and it winds up in places that serve this particular soup. I guess it's a medicinal kind of thing. But anyway, the soup costs like $1,000 a bowl or something, and these people are making all kinds of money. So we're going to make that against the law to simply take a bear for that reason. I mean, there's other reasons why people hunt, but just to extricate the gallbladder and cut the paws off, and didn't seem to the Agriculture Committee to be a very humane thing. So we're going to probably kill that practice if we can. Anyway, it's been a great thing for me to be involved, because I didn't, unlike you, grow up in the country. I grew up in a very urban area, and so for me to be in the Agriculture Committee, and I've been there 8 years, I'm just really beginning to learn about everything and understand, especially in Vermont, what a great state it is to live in. And that Northeast Kingdom is a really special place. My chair, Senator Bobby Starr, is from Troy, and he's a lifelong resident of Troy. In fact, his family goes way, way, way back. So I've learned so much from him about our wildlife and about things that we're doing to preserve it. So how long did it take to become a state game warden?
It's kind of a long process. So when you first apply, it's about a year through the application process, because there's different tests you have to take, interviews, and then finally you're conditionally hired pending polygraph examination and all that, personal history questionnaire and a few other things. So there's that. It takes about a year. And then the training process also takes about a year. So what that looks like is once you're hired, you're sent to the police academy in Pittsford, where you learn how to be a law enforcement officer and you get fully certified as a law enforcement officer. And then from there, you go on to warden school, which is about a month. And then from there, you go on to FTO or field training. And that's about 6 to 7 months of field training where you're actually in the field, working with a warden in the field. Every month, you're in a different location. So you kind of travel around the state learning different things.
Okay.
So that all takes about a year for training.
So your time at the academy, I think is it an 18-week course to become a level 1? It's a while. It isn't just going in for an hour.
No, it's not. No, I seem to remember it's around 5 months. They sometimes change it, a little bit here and there. So okay. I'm not sure what it is right now, but around 5 months. Okay. Yep.
And there must be obviously parts of the job that you like a lot, and then parts that you accept because it's part of the job. Tell us a little bit about the differences, I guess, if you could.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that being a game warden is the best job in law enforcement. It's for a number of reasons. We're very self-motivated, self-directed as game wardens. So we go out and decide where we're going to patrol for the day. And, we don't have somebody telling us what areas we're going to patrol. We look at the needs of our district. We also can decide what hours we work. Same thing. If we need to work an early shift, maybe middle of the day, afternoon, evenings, a split shift, depending on what's needed for the area, we can do that. And so, I really like that. It's flexible, and it also allows us to kind of determine where the needs are in our district. Okay. So that's a really good part of the job. Also, like I was saying before, it takes place outside, which is a huge plus for me. I like to be able to go out in the woods and, spend time outside at the lake and enforcing those sorts of laws. Also, during deer season, we spend a lot of time in the woods looking for bait and stuff like that. So I really like that aspect of it. Some drawbacks, I guess, would be just being in the public eye. So as a game warden, everybody knows you as the warden. You kind of don't go unnoticed. And sometimes you just want to be, not noticed, essentially,
Okay. Are you always in uniform or not?
You mean as when I'm on duty?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, sometimes we'll do plainclothes details, but that's fairly rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is your district?
So my district is the Rutland District, it's called, but it's composed of Chittenden, Brandon, Pittsford, Proctor, Minden, Killington, Rutland Town, Rutland City. I don't know if I'm forgetting anything. 9 towns. Okay. Yeah. Yep.
Maybe West Rutland? I don't know.
Yes, West Rutland. Okay. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So I assume, and again, inform me, because I'm coming at this as a new person learning, that you are busier at certain times of the year than others. I'm going to guess that the hunting seasons might take a little bit more of your time than other times of the year.
Yeah, that would be true. Although I think in the world today is things are shifting slightly. So yes, historically and even now, we are very busy during deer season. That's kind of our main time of year when we, make a lot of criminal cases and stuff like that. But there's a lot of people that fish. So all summer long, we're busy. There's a lot of people that go boating, ATV, all that stuff. We enforce all that stuff. So starting in the spring, we're pretty much busy, when trout season opens, right up and through deer season into ice fishing season, snowmobile, all that. And then also with the human wildlife conflicts, we've seen, I've just from my time as a warden, I've seen a rise in those. Especially with bears. So we're busy a lot in the summertime with bear interactions with people and, issues with bears getting into garbage, bird feeders, which really should not be up this time of year. And we're constantly trying to educate people about how to coexist with bears and try to limit that negative interaction.
Okay. Yeah, I want to delve into that a little bit because they were here before we were here, probably.
Yeah.
You got to go way back for that. And I think the tendency for people is to think as soon as the last little bit of snow leaves their property, it's time to put the bird feeder up because that's a good thing to do. But
just the opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so educate us, if you will, on the bear problem. And I don't mean it that it's the bears' it's our problem, but
yeah.
How we interact with bears.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I hear people all the time say, 10, 20 years ago, we had no issues with bears. Now, all of a sudden, it's a problem. And yes, so our bear population is not over what the biologists think is healthy for the landscape, but we do have a higher population than we did 20 years ago. So, yes, we have a higher bear population now than we did 20 years ago. And then people just aren't used to living with bears. And I think that's one of the biggest things. They're used to being able to put their garbage outside, leave it there, nothing gets into it, have bird feeders up all summer long, nothing gets into it. That's not the case anymore. We live with bears. Bears, live around us. We live in bear country, and pretty much everywhere in Vermont now is bear country, including Rutland City. Mm. So the main thing to really know and look out for is just make sure you are not providing food for the bears. Because bears don't want to be around people. They're just like any other wild animal. They prefer to be by themselves, not around humans. Humans are a threat. They're a danger to bears. That's how bears see it. The only issue is when people are providing food for them. And maybe it's unintentional. So you leave your garbage out, you have a greasy wrapper in there. And bears are really just trying to get calories for winter, in whatever way they can. And they will overcome their fear of humans and come and eat out of your garbage because it's giving them a lot of calories, and that's what they need to survive the winter. And it's not healthy for them to do that for a number of reasons. One of them is the obvious reason. It creates conflict. And then once that conflict happens, if it happens over and over again, the bear keeps coming to that garbage, it learns. And then eventually it becomes a quote unquote problem bear. It's hard to train it not to do that anymore.
They have a pretty good sense of smell, right?
Very, very good sense of smell.
But not so much sight. Is that true, or am I?
They can see fairly well as well. Yeah, I don't know exactly what their sense of sight is like, but they can see quite well. But definitely they can smell way better than any human could possibly smell. Yeah. So their nose is highly sensitive.
So what if people do want to feed the birds? Mm-hmm. What are some of the ways they could do that without jeopardizing a potential conflict with a bear?
So you really shouldn't feed the birds in the summertime.
Okay.
For a couple of reasons. Birds don't need it. They have plenty of wild, resources for food. I know a lot of people want to see the birds, which is why they feed them. But in the wintertime, it's safe to feed birds because as long as there's snow on the ground, even although this winter there were bears out and about all winter long because we had a fairly mild winter, really. And it seems to be the case now as our winters are getting more and more mild. But by and large, it's relatively safe to feed birds if there's snow on the ground. When the snow leaves, you should not have bird feeders up. Okay. And some people will put them out. They'll take them in at night and say, I'm taking them in at night, so the bear's not going to get into it. The problem with that is when birds feed from a feeder, they kick seeds out into the ground, and then that bear comes in and cleans those up. And it's still being attracted to your area by your bird feeder. And then from there, it can start to become more of a problem in other areas. So it may start tearing the siding off your house because it smells something good in your house, or get into your garage or something like that. Yeah. And then it starts being destructive, and that's what we want to prevent.
So would people be surprised? I've never seen a bear den. I don't have any idea what it might look like. but I have a feeling that people might be surprised how close they might be to, sort of the civilized part of a city.
Yeah, I mean, wherever a bear can find a safe spot to den up, they can do that. The females need to have a denning spot to have their young. So it could be, a lot of things. It could be an upturned tree that has a good place that they can crawl under and be safe, wherever that might be. Typically they're not going to want to den somewhere that's next to, a noisy barking dog or something like that.
Okay. And who is the predator for a bear besides humans?
Not much.
No?
Yeah, I mean, vehicles. So
okay.
They get hit a lot by vehicles. I've seen that. Crossing the road, things like that. Humans hunt them as well. They're a game species, but they don't have a lot of natural predators. Okay.
I wondered, we have big cats supposedly around, but I don't know whether they interact with bears or not.
Not to my knowledge. I mean, we have bobcats around, and I've seen bobcats take down fully grown deer. Or I haven't witnessed it, but I've come upon it and been called to it and discovered that. So actually last year I think I had a number of those instances where a bobcat took down a deer.
We're talking to Abby Serra, who's a state game warden, and this is Catamount Community Connection. We're trying to talk about as many of the things that you do for your job as we can. So we've talked a little bit about the interaction of bears and humans and things you can do to minimize the chances that you're going to have a problem. I know deer hunting's a big issue here in the state of Vermont as well, not just for folks who live here all around, but we have out-of-staters that come up and hunt as well. So you would normally go out during hunting season and I guess supervise is maybe a nice way to put it, what's going on in the woods?
Yeah, I do. Deer season's a big time of year for us, and we get a lot of calls, during deer season of different issues. So everything from hunters, having conflicts with each other to posted property issues, people hunting on posted property or not. Sometimes it doesn't end up to be actually posted, which is often the case. And then also people, potentially shooting deer from motor vehicles, from the road, things like that. Those are all things that we look out for and enforce, as well as baiting, which is not legal in Vermont to bait deer. We'll be out patrolling, responding to calls, going in the woods, walking around looking for bait, which is something we do a lot.
How would you know who put the bait out, though?
Well, you wait for them. You find out.
All right.
Yeah, that's one way. There's also a lot of other ways we can find out, if it's on, depending on where it's located, if there's any labeled tree stands, stuff like that. Okay. But yeah, typically it's a waiting game.
And then in the summer, you mentioned, get near a body of water. So are you actually on the water at times?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We have boats. We're out on the lakes enforcing boat regulations, also checking fishing licenses, things like that. Making sure that people are safe on the boats, not drinking, yep. Not intoxicated. So
in your area, I guess I'm trying to think, Lake Dunmore, maybe Lake Bombazine would be the two that maybe Lake St. Catherine, maybe that's too far.
So none of those are actually in my district. Okay. Chittenden Reservoir is, and that gets hit pretty hard in the summertime. But I do assist my neighboring wardens on Bombazine, St. Catherine, Dunmore, all those bodies of water.
So normally, I know it's true, in the city, normally, well, maybe not normally, two officers will sometimes ride together. Are you out alone for the most part?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So almost always we're alone, except for sometimes when we do, like go out in the boat or something like that, or go on snowmobile patrol, we'll pair up. It just makes it easier to check boats, especially when it's really windy out and there's a lot of waves. Yeah. To have somebody that's in control of the boat and maybe holding the other boat and the other person writing whatever paperwork needs to be written. So it makes it a lot easier.
Okay. We're talking to Abby Serra from the Game Warden, and we're going to take a break here on Catamount Community Connection. We'll be coming right back. We're back on Catamount Community Connection, and we're speaking with Abby Serra, Game Warden for the state of Vermont. We've talked a little bit about the interaction of some of the wildlife with humans, the bear and the deer, and of course the fishing in the summer. You started a program, you told me, something about venison, right? Yeah,
it's called Venison for Vermonters. And it was started by me and Jeff Whipple. So Jeff Whipple's another warden. He's over in the Vershey or Chelsea area. We started that in 2020 because, well, that was when COVID happened, as you know. And it was also, there was a lot of insecurity around food and maybe where people's meat was coming from because of the packing plants that had issues with staffing and all that. And we had a lot of roadkills that were salvageable. And that year we had a lot of moose as well that were hit by cars that were salvageable. And so we took that meat that was, still good. We processed it and started distributing it to food shelves. And that's kind of where Venison for Vermonters was born. So now, I do a lot of processing of roadkills. Mainly, it's deer around here. We don't have a whole lot of moose anymore around this area. Some bear, and then also in the Northeast, a lot of moose up there get hit throughout the year. So that program is just, we have historically always given out whole deer to people. So say somebody wants a deer, we'll give it to them whole. But this program allows us to actually process it and give it to people who really need it that might not otherwise be able to process a whole animal themselves.
So you must have a fairly big vehicle. If you're out on the road and you come across a roadkill, you're able to load it. And where do you process? How does all that happen?
Yeah, so all game wardens have pickup trucks equipped with winches and things like that. So, for deer, I can just pull it in the back of my truck. For moose, you got to use the winch and some ramps, as you can imagine. Yep. So pretty much any game warden can pick up those animals. And then as far as processing goes, I do most of my processing. Well, I have done it at Kehoe. We have a small cutting room there, and a cooler over there. So that's the conservation camp.
Okay. And how do you find people to give it to?
Oh, I just give it to food shelves.
Okay.
So like Pittsford Food Shelf has received a number of donations. I've had food shelves contact me from down south, southern Vermont, northern Vermont. They've come down and picked up loads of meat. So, yeah.
I will speak about, and I don't want to put Abby on the spot at all, so this is just me as a state senator talking, but there was a bill. Well, there technically, as we record this, still is a bill. By the time you hear this program, hopefully the legislature will have adjourned for the year and the biennium, and we won't be able to pass any more laws and in my view, do any more damage. But there is a bill, it was a Senate Bill 258, that would have, I think, drastically redrawn the Fish and Wildlife Board, and it came out of the Senate Natural Resources Committee, and it did pass on our side, and it was then sent to the House. And as far as I know, and again, we're recording this on the 4th of May, we probably won't see that bill again. My spies in the other body tell me that it's going to use an expression that's up in the State House, it's going to die on the wall, which is kind of a graphic way to put it. But in other words, it means that the bill is placed on the wall in the committee, and it's not taken up for action, and it's not brought to the floor for a vote. So I did know that the governor at one point was very, very opposed to it and most likely would have vetoed the bill. And I think we had enough on the Senate side to sustain the veto. So I found it to be a very troubling sort of bill. I think our Fish and Wildlife folks do a tremendous job for us and do a great job. I really like the commissioner, and I didn't want to see anything change from what we're doing. So I voted against the bill, and I'm hoping that, again, by the time you hear this, we've gone home and we can't hurt anybody anymore. Anyway, that's just my view. And I won't ask Abby to comment either way on that because that puts her in a difficult position. I want to talk a little bit, though, about recruitment. You mentioned from your own bringing up from Wells River that you kind of were always interested in being outside, being in the woods, and so it was a sort of natural process for you. You went to VTC and or Linden.
Yeah, Linden.
And
yep.
And graduated and began to change from possibly being a vet to go into the Fish and Wildlife Department. But there are other ways people, I guess, find the job. I'm not sure how Commissioner Herrick actually. I don't think he was ever a game warden. I'm not sure he could have been. I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, he's in management. I mean, basically. So that's kind of the way he found it. But it's a good job, right? I mean, people make a living doing this, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm making a living doing it. I think most wardens that do it, though, they don't do it for the money. They do it because they have some sort of connection with the natural world in some way, and that's the draw for it. I know we have a lot of different, wardens from different backgrounds on the force right now. We have some wardens that have always wanted to be game wardens their entire life since they were a little kid. And we have some wardens that didn't know about it until later in life. And we have some wardens, a lot of wardens that hunt, fish, and trap. We have some wardens that don't. But I think the common thread with all of us is an appreciation for the natural world. And, now we have a number of ways that you can apply or that you can be qualified to apply to be a game warden. So you have to have either college experience. So you could have a bachelor's degree in any field now, and you could be qualified to apply. Before that wasn't you couldn't qualify if you had a bachelor's degree in literature or something like that. But now, as long as you have a bachelor's degree, you can apply. And then another way you can apply is if you have military experience, so 4 years military or law enforcement. And then you can also apply if you have, I believe it's 5 years, don't quote me on that, but work experience. So there's a number of ways that you can kind of get your foot in the door initially. And it opens it up to a broader range of people that might want to apply.
And obviously there's men and women involved.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty good balance.
Well, we're working on that.
Okay,
Yeah. So when I first applied, there was one female.
No kidding.
Yep. And I was the second. There had been more previously that had, where they were no longer working. Yeah. But yeah, there was one female, and then I was the second. And then now we have a number of females. We have, let's see here, let me count. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 of us, I believe now. Okay. Yeah.
Well, we're lucky to have you down here. I'll tell you that.
Well, thank you.
How many are there in the whole department, game wardens?
Ooh, like 30-something wardens. Yeah, I'd have to count them up, but yeah, around 34-ish or something like that.
Did you get to pick the Rutland district when you signed up?
Sort of, kind of. Not really. So there was 3 of us that were picking districts at the same time. So there's 3 open districts, and you just put in for what you wanted, and they decided. It's nice whenever you can agree on it between the 3 of you. Yeah. And that's kind of the way it happened with us. But you don't really get to pick where you go. They usually have, if you're hired with a number of other wardens, you have a number of options, and you've got to kind of work it out between yourselves. But yeah, as far as the options go, you don't get to pick which districts are being opened.
Do you rotate at all? I mean, could you wind up in the Northeast Kingdom or down south, or is this your district until you retire?
It's my district until I retire if I want it to be. So if I wanted to, if there was an opening somewhere else, I could put in for that. If somebody had higher seniority than me, they would get it over me. Okay. So that's kind of how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe you want to go back to your home area, Wells River. Yeah. Maybe you don't. Maybe for a number of reasons, it could be the other way too. I don't know.
No, I love my hometown. Yeah. Yeah, I go back there often. My mom still lives there, so. Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of respect and admiration for the folks that live up in the kingdom, because it's a different world. It really is. And I don't think people, well, not to pick on people, but I don't think people in Chittenden County have any idea what it's like to live in the kingdom. And
yeah, it's very different up there. When I became a warden and was in training, I traveled around the whole state, and was a month in a different spot all the time, and so I got to see a lot of different parts of Vermont. Yeah. And I remember, I grew up in Newbury, Wells River area. Things are definitely a lot different there than other parts of the state. And like when I came to Rutland, it was like, is this New York? Yeah, like it felt like New York, and yeah, Chittenden County is a whole nother ball of wax up there for sure.
Are we similar to other states? Do you know, Abby? Wells River is pretty close to the Connecticut, so you must have something to do with New Hampshire from time to time too. Do they set their situation up pretty much the same, or do you know?
As far as training goes and stuff?
Yeah, and how many there are, and the sort of regulations that are in effect?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is fairly similar. I don't know about their training, how they do that. But from what I've seen, it is fairly similar. They have different laws, but they're along the same lines. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know if you were up in the Wells River, Newbury area, whether there'd be sort of a cooperation between the two states, if something was going on that bridged the river back and forth, and you get to know people on the other side, maybe.
Yeah, I know the wardens up in like Randy Hazard up in Canaan. He knows the New Hampshire wardens pretty well across the river.
What about going to the other country?
up
north there, Canada, eh?
I don't know. That might be a little more of a jump.
Yeah,
Get across the border there,
Yeah.
But no, I mean, we enforce Vermont laws, so we have jurisdiction in Vermont. But that's not to say that the wardens up in northeastern Vermont don't know the wardens in New Hampshire.
Sure. Yeah. Hopefully, we're making good laws.
Yep.
Every now and then, you must have to get apprised of a new law or a new regulation.
Yeah.
So usually they go into effect July 1st, which coordinates with the fiscal year change. I can't think. The Agency of Agriculture comes in to my committee and generally does a miscellaneous bill and then goes up to the House committee and does another one up there. And then the two committees kind of work back and forth on anything that the agency wants changed. Some of it has to do with, milking situations or transportation situations, but some of it has to do with fish and wildlife. And, I don't know whether I'm trying to think back because we just, again, concluded a session. We did have a miscellaneous bill on both sides. I don't know whether there was anything that would affect you. I mentioned that bear regulation that we're not going to allow people to basically just take a bear for its parts, the gallbladder and the paws. I mean, we even heard stories that people were cutting the paw off while the bear was still alive and stuff. It was really troubling. So hopefully that is a law now, or will be.
I think that would be pretty difficult to do.
Yeah, I don't know how they did it either. Maybe tranquilized it and then cut the paws off, but
then you'd have tranquilizer in your paws.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That might not go over so well either.
No.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway,
was that in Vermont?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. People coming up to do that and then selling the meat out of state, and so it will be a new law, and you may be hearing about it down the road.
Yeah. Well, there's always. I mean, every year it seems like there's some changes with Title 10, which is our laws around hunting, fishing, trapping, and it's hard to keep up with it. Like you learn one thing and the next year it's different. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same way making them. The only way we know whether it's working or not is if people come in and testify that, gee, the one you passed 2 years ago didn't seem to be doing a good thing. Why don't you try this kind of thing? And then we do, and either it gets better or it doesn't. So
yeah,
we make the laws, and then you enforce them, and hopefully there's a happy medium there. So
yeah, absolutely.
Please let me know, okay, if we're not doing a good job with it. Okay, any last things you want to mention that we didn't cover?
I don't think so. I just would like to stress the bear issues we were talking about because, we're definitely into bear season right now, and it seems so far to be like it's going to be a bad year for conflicts because I've already had a number of calls and things about it. So
already, okay.
Yeah, just keeping your trash secured. So don't leave it out. Like put it somewhere safe. You can also make your trash can less attractive by putting like ammonia smell in the bottom of it to try to deter the bear. But that's not a solution if it's not secured. But that does help reduce the odors and things like that. So securing garbage, no bird feeders out. Those are the main things you can do.
Okay.
Yep.
Abby Serra, Game Warden for the state of Vermont. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll see each other again.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for listening to Catamount Community Connection.